It made me think of something that I haven't thought of in a while. A friend of mine who has passed that used to live in New York, he struggled a lot with depression and anxiety. And this time of year, sort of the compounding effect of the shorter days, the off schedule, the pressure of the holidays, everything was challenging for him. So he had a ritual, and I would call it self-therapy. He would go to the ice skating rink in Central Park, starting right after Thanksgiving, all the way through the holidays, almost a daily basis, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And one day I just thought, it's like, do you ice skate or, what, do you go there all the time? And he's like, well, no, I don't ice skate. I said, well, why are you going to the ice rink? And he said, well, that is one of the places I've found on a regular basis I can go. And there's so much happiness and so much joy going on. And when I can't find my own, I can borrow some from those people.
Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alecia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Welcome back to the Conscious Edge podcast. I'm your host, Alecia St. Germain, and I'm here with my pal, Jonathan Duggar. How are you?
I'm doing awesome.
We're mustering all kinds of energy today because we thought you might need it, because as you're listening to this, you are in the throes of the holiday season. And we were thinking about what would be most helpful for you and how overwhelming this time coming up to certain holidays, for depending on if you celebrate Christmas or I think some people at this point would already be celebrating Hanukkah and some of the other holidays that are around. So you're in the throes of all of it. And it's so funny because as I was preparing for this, we both went back and re-listened to our episode on Overwhelm. And that by far has been the most popular episode that we have ever done.
Telling in and of itself right there.
Yeah, by a landslide. I mean, by like 50 some downloads, like by a landslide. We have our loyal listeners, which we love you. If you are one of our loyal listeners, we appreciate you so much for being here every week. And it's so fun to get to support you. Actually got a little bit of feedback I wanted to share with you, Jonathan. Someone was recently listening to your episode, getting back from Italy and all the things you learned about traveling abroad. And they were like so appreciative that you got down to the granular level of things and how it was so many things that we would not think about. And it just didn't even occur to her. And so she found it super helpful. And then the other thing was you happened to mention renewing your line of credit.
Mm-hmm.
And she has a line of credit. And she was like, I never understood why it had like an expiration date and like what happens. And so even that challenge that you shared filled in a gap in knowledge for her.
Oh, wow.
That she didn't know. So it's like,
awesome.
It's so funny how sometimes we think we're here rambling about random things, but it fills in. And sometimes we are. But I don't think that's true because somewhere along the way that fills in a gap of knowledge for someone, or it's an aha, or the most minor thing that you don't think has an impact was meaningful. Yeah. And so I thought that was really cool. And I wanted to share that with you.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So if you're just joining us for the very first time, Jonathan and I started this podcast a little over 6 months ago out of an idea for a retreat, and really this realization that people sometimes build these lives and go after wealth building and building businesses with really good intention, I believe, but get lost along the way and lose the joy and fun and reason for really doing all of these things. And so if you like today's episode, we want to invite you to hit the follow button or subscribe, whatever you're listening to, and join us on this journey. We're loving doing this podcast. It's so much fun. And we love being able to come to you every week with something we think will be helpful. So, funny thing about Overwhelm, Jonathan, I listened to the episode that we did. We're going to link it here because there's some really good practical stuff that we shared in there about what to do when you are in that state of overwhelm, when you're like flooded with so much emotion and spiraling thoughts, and it feels very intense, and how to get yourself out of that. So we wanted to take a different aspect of that. But I have a funny story for you.
Great. I love when you lead with a story.
I believe that my higher self, my soul, left me a little nugget in that episode that I needed to hear today. Yeah. So in that episode, I talked about how I was in the middle of doing a summit and I realized I had forgot to renew my registration tags. And so this morning when I was getting ready and I was listening to the episode and getting ready for today, I realized that on my other vehicle, I have been driving around with expired tags for a month.
Oopsie.
So I quick ran out and I laughed so hard. Oh my gosh. Like it was such a different experience from 6 months ago. I laughed so hard. I was like, oh, everything really is content. How perfectly that should happen. I swear we decided we wanted to do this episode on Overwhelm. And I think my soul was somewhere going, hey, you should do Overwhelm because you need to renew your tags.
You need to re-listen to that episode. There's a specific reminder built in there.
Yeah. So I ran out this morning and I renewed the tags on my other vehicle because it's in a business name. So it doesn't go by our birthdays. And I was just thinking about how lucky and privileged I am to literally, it took me 20 minutes to get in and out of the DMV and renew these tags. And I was reflecting on how it wasn't overwhelm. It was so easy. Exactly. And the fact that there was a time in my life where I would have thought I was such a bad person and I did so many things wrong. And oh my gosh, I'm the worst. And I was just like, had no energy around it other than, oh, I guess I get to give the government $10 more than I would have for being late. So funny little nugget there.
Yeah. Actually, you just described a first item in Brene Brown's article that we were both been talking about that's so timely released. Yesterday, I think it came out and coincided with us getting ready to record this perfectly, as all her things always have such great info in them and great nuggets. But some things specifically to what we're talking about, it's like you just said, I would have thought of that as overwhelm instead of just something I have to do and take care of. And she reflects on that, how we often misuse language. And she even uses the terminology neurolinguistics, which that's one of my areas of geekiness. I love neurolinguistics and the use of language and what we say and how we say it and how it impacts our behavior and our thoughts and our emotions. So, we often set ourselves up to enter a state of overwhelm as opposed to recognizing a situation that really is just stressful or just inconvenient or just, a pain in the butt, and calling it what it is. And we make it into an exaggerated state that feels like we're going to die. We're having panic, or we can't do another thing. We really are in a state of overload and overwhelm and start to shut down, as opposed to, like you said, just saying, oh, you know what? This is something I've got to go take care of And then recognizing afterwards, that was pretty easy in the context of how it could be.
How it could be, yeah. Yeah, well, it would have been even easier if I, I don't know, mailed it in when I got it, but I don't know what was happening.
There is that.
I just find it very fascinating. But we wanted to give today a little bit of a holiday flavor because, the holidays are such a loaded time for people. I really love the holiday cheer, joy, celebration. I always have, but I used to make them really, really hard. And so we wanted to give it a holiday flavor. So there is this, you called it discord or
dissonance,
imbalance. There's this, it's like there's two different, there's like the message that's put out there. And then there's how we sometimes actually feel, and they don't, and actually what is happening even.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's very disorienting for people, I think is kind of what I think of it as. So what were you going to talk about regarding that?
Well, just this morning, as I was sort of reflecting on the subject, I just sort of did a little exercise of what positive messaging or what a almost exaggeratedly joyful messaging do we get at this time of year that's often in discord or dissonance with how we really feel or how the environment around us feels. And I just made a quick list and, came up with Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and Joy to the World and Holly Jolly and Peace and Love and all those very positive messages, which are awesome. But when they're in direct discord or dissonance with how we really feel and how others are feeling, it just sets up this state of turmoil that can be very, very difficult to navigate and difficult to figure out and figure out how to shift to that positive framework. So we set ourselves up quite often for failure or feeling like a failure because we don't align with society's picture or the fairy tale picture that we see in the Hallmark movies that are so prevalent this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the where we have to start working from. Is how do we own where we are and what we feel and what we think in an honest way, and then work on in a creative and positive way how to get back to some of that wonderful messaging that really should be, that we hope to be part of our holiday experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so, oh gosh, this reminds me of so many things. I think there's one is, what was your experience as a child growing up around holidays? And I have some really positive experiences around the holidays. I think that's why I love them so much, because the holidays were a big deal and they were very joyful. And also, I think being an adult and a mom now, I also see how much my mom did, like how much work it was for my mom and my grandparents. And I now kind of understand why my grandma, she stopped putting up a Christmas tree and she stopped doing some things later in life. And it felt like, oh, like what a Grinch, right? But I think some of the magic that I experienced as a kid was at the cost of somebody else's well-being and peace.
Yes.
And, I realize that now, but you don't necessarily have that when you're a kid. You don't understand that when you're a kid necessarily.
Yeah. I think parents and grandparents often end up in a place of where they are doing everything for a child or for someone else. It doesn't even have to be a child, often to the harm of their finances and their time and their physical and mental energy. They deplete themselves for others. And this actually will lead into a podcast we plan to do in the future related to giving and receiving. But now that I have a little space and distance of my own from family and traditions and things like that, it is interesting to be kind of an observer of some of the things that were very joyful as a child and as a young adult, even that I recognize now were putting a strain on my family, certain people in my family. Often, and especially when I was younger, a financial strain. I look back on that and how my parents worked so hard to provide things for us that I know now they could not afford at the time. And I love them for that. But at the same time, there is a little bit of, I don't know if it's guilt, if you would call it guilt, but this discord, this dissonance that rises up in me. It's like, I didn't have to have that bicycle. I didn't have to have that, whatever it was. But it obviously brought them joy on some level to be able to do that. But I also think our society, unfortunately, instills, especially in parents, this sense of sort of keeping up with the neighbor, keeping up with the societal norm. And I'm using air quotes for norm in your area, because, you don't want to show up at church and somebody mentioned that there were no presents under the tree, or whatever it is, or that the family had a big falling out at Thanksgiving dinner, or those kind of things aren't talked about in a normalized way as part of our society, because it's supposed to be happy and joyful and Merry Christmas and fa la 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 freaking la.
Yeah. And alongside of that, like, this time of year also brings up grief, missing people who are no longer with us, and wishing that, and just that love, that missing them. And it's really, really difficult. And it's heavy on the heart. And I think part of our episode today is really wanting whoever's listening to connect and honor whatever it is this time of year feels for you. Going back to that article that Brene put out, it was funny because we came up with this on Monday. And then I think by Wednesday or Thursday, she was also posting about this. And so a lot of times these individuals that we look to as well as being big resources for us and people that we lend to, like Brene Brown, tend to come out with the things just as we're thinking them too. So that's those wonderful synchronicities that happen in the world. So, she was talking about naming feelings. And one of the books I go to oftentimes is Atlas of the Heart, as being probably one of the best books for naming not just basic emotions, but the complexity of emotions that we all go through. And so just honoring where you are, what you're feeling, and naming it is really, I think, an important piece of this. And so, like, an example, I love to give gifts. I really have always enjoyed buying gifts for people. And as I've gotten older, I have also found that buying gifts has become also challenging in that I don't like to give just gifts to give gifts. I like to give them because they're meaningful or something I think the person would like. And so some of my gift giving has become very, very difficult. And then it has become a task. And then it has become a last minute rush at times in the past. And so I was really reflecting on, like, why has this thing that is part of the season become something I don't necessarily always enjoy doing now? And what I realized was some of the hardest gifts are the ones where I have not been as connected in that relationship as I would like. And so I just have had this realization, like, what is missing is the connection and the slowing down and taking time to talk to that person and being in relationship with that person. Because I don't have the same challenge buying gifts for my kids. It's so fun. Like, I have to actually like, hang on, they have enough, because it's easy to buy for them. I want them to have those things. But when I'm struggling with someone else to buy them a gift, it's because, I have not been in relationship with them.
I think you're hitting something specific that I was trying to verbalize earlier when you went before we started recording, that you and I were kind of discussing, is this concept of dissonance. And one of the areas of dissonance that happens so often around the holidays is where there's a lot of overcompensation going on. People and families and friends are overcompensating because of a disconnect throughout the rest of the year. So you get to the holidays and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to make these phone calls, give these gifts, have these parties. And I have
send these Christmas cards.
Send these Christmas cards. Exactly. I have a friend that recently just said, it's like, well, the reason we do this holiday party is because we want to see people that we haven't seen all year. And I happen to know that this party, although it's always wonderfully done and so much attention put into it, it's very stressful for them to put it on. And they don't ever seem to enjoy themselves at the party because they're so busy taking care of everybody else. And I'm not judging in any way, but just from an observing standpoint, there's so many areas of trying to make up for lost time, trying to make up for disconnection, trying to make up for loss of relationship. And gift giving is one of those things. And I think the craziness with the Christmas cards and all those things, it's sort of like, how do we figure out a way within ourselves to spread that love and that intention and attention through the whole year, you know? Mm-hmm. And instead of a huge event or huge ways at the end of the year, how about little, very happy, joyful pieces spread throughout the year? I know personally, I would rather have that. Mm-hmm. I would much rather be on the receiving end of a friendly text on a weekly or, once a month, or an email with a funny e-card that says, hope you're doing well, or just checking in or something like that. I love those little bright spots on a regular basis.
Yeah. And we've even gone to, so I come from many divorces amongst my parent figures. And so when I was younger, it really was like multiple Christmases. Mm-hmm. I had my family, and then Christmas Day, I had my dad, and then we went to like this family and that family. And so as we have had children, we've actually taken the holiday season and we've split it out into many weekends. And instead of trying to do everything in those 2 days, we just do one family or one set of individuals or whoever it is we're celebrating whatever with. We've spread it out so that we can actually relax and have quality time. And we valued and prioritized quality time over the actual holiday. And that was really hard for some people to get their head around, that they could have the holiday spirit without it having to be on the actual day. Yep. And so there were people that were uncomfortable with that, and it took some getting used to for them. But it's so much better for us and for our kids. And the holidays now have become a time that I really enjoy because it is a slower pace, which is, it sounds counterintuitive because we do a lot during this time, but we do it at a slower pace than the 2 days I remember being used to.
I think that ability to slow down and figure out what works best for you and those mm-hmm. closest to you is hugely important, because a lot of the holidays, the frenzy around the holidays gets into this almost self-sacrifice, self-sabotage sort of system mm-hmm. where we're doing everything either to conform to a stereotype or conform to somebody else's wishes. Or a big one is to conform to a tradition that is outdated or doesn't even really apply anymore, or maybe isn't even attainable anymore. So, that's with this resistance to establishing new traditions or being flexible in our traditions. That's where a lot of this discord comes from. And one of the things that I've found over the past probably 10 years, since my dad passed, Christmas was always a big deal at my mom and dad's.
Has it been 10 years?
It's been 10 years this year.
Why does that feel like that was just a couple of years ago? Oh my gosh.
I know. It's that level of loss and that sort of cycle of grief that never really ends is very interesting. And it refreshes every year, because I distinctly remember like the last Christmas with my dad and our first Christmas without him. I mean, I remember that in a really specific, like light bulb memory kind of way. And our traditions have changed. They've evolved, and they're not better or they're not worse. They're just different now. And that's okay. But there were several years where it was hard to find the okay in that. It was hard to say, this is different and it's okay. It was all about, oh, I wish, da-da-da-da, or remember when. And memories are great, but when we hold those as a standard for how the now should be or the future should be, it gets really, really hard. We're setting up, again, our own sabotage by doing that. So finding those traditions, or just being flexible with traditions and being flexible with the imperfection of those traditions. Because that's the other thing. We want the Disneyland in our head. We want the Hallmark movie. And it's never the Hallmark movie.
Yeah.
It's something way less than perfect. But being able to find the humor in the imperfection and the fun in the imperfection is hugely shifting in such a positive way.
Yeah, no, I can relate. I can relate to that so much because, from when you're a child and you have your grandparents and you have your parents and you sometimes have your great grandparents and all of your cousins. And as you grow up and then other people get married, then there's other dynamics in the family. And then you have family that passes away. And there is this point where, and I'm definitely in it right now, where my grandparents have passed. And our kids are still little. And so our holidays are very small. And I'm used to these big Italian, huge family gatherings. And we're in a stage of life that it doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. And so then I was thinking about, well, there's going to come a point where our kids are older and they do have families of their own. And so they may become big again. But we're just in this stage where it's small. And it feels odd to me. It's a little bit uncomfortable. And I said to my husband, I can't believe we're recording this right before Thanksgiving. And I can't believe next week is Thanksgiving. It doesn't feel like Thanksgiving. And he said the best thing. He said, well, what can we do to make it feel like Thanksgiving? And I thought that was such a great question, because it's not about what have we always done? What's it supposed to look like? It's checking in mindfully and saying, well, what do we want it to look like?
Mm-hmm. I actually wrote down a few things that were just sort of triggers for me to think on particular areas or to focus on particular areas. And one of the things I wrote down was focus on what really matters. Mm-hmm. Drill down, be honest, and focus on what really matters. And when you get to that core, that's where the magic really happens, because all these layers we add on, all this stress we add on, often has nothing to do with what really matters. It's somebody else's messaging. It's somebody else's ideal. So let's say the giant meal, like my mom, our Thanksgiving's always been a big deal for my mom too. And my mom is an amazing cook. I come from you and I both are so fortunate to come from some great cooks and be able to, experience that part of the love of food and showing love with food and all that kind of thing, which I think is amazing. But my mom has always hosted Thanksgiving for years and years, and people come from all over to come to her Thanksgiving. And I started thinking about that a few years ago when it did feel like, I think that year she ended up with over 30 people at her house. And I started thinking about kind of going through the layers of, well, what's the real important piece in here? What's the important piece? And what would be the important piece for my mom? And like you mentioned earlier, it's connection. She wants to connect and reconnect. And that's her way of doing that. And it's like, okay, what are some ways we maybe could simplify this or take some of the pressure off of her to make this connection? So one year we tried, my mom was going to fix the turkey, and my mom makes, we're from the South, we have dressing, we don't have stuffing. So my mom makes this incredible dressing, which is my her mother's recipe, and may even go further back than that. But so my mom was going to do the turkey and the dressing, and everybody was going to bring like a favorite thing. And it was so much fun. It's kind of coming up. Like I did something completely different that several people were like, that doesn't sound good to me. And then it was actually a hit. It turned out to be good. And I got some satisfaction out of that and was happy about it. But my point is that was a way to adjust a tradition in a way that was really trying to get to what the core, what really mattered in that situation. And that's connection, and connecting in a way that's positive and less stressful and simple and more simplified. So I don't know that we do have managed to maintain that necessarily, but I do think that things are continue to evolve, and that willingness to talk about it too has continued to evolve. Because that's another thing. You didn't talk at the holidays. You didn't talk about if something was bothering you, or if you really didn't have time to do something, or if this didn't felt out of alignment with what you felt like you or your family needed. You didn't talk about those things. You pushed it down. You suppressed that until after the holidays. It might come up in maybe some not so positive ways. So, but that's often, the blow ups that happen around family time. You hear about disconnections happening at family, the blow up at Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. That's why it's this pressure buildup over time that explodes often in a very detrimental way right around that point, because we haven't been honest with ourselves and others about what really matters and trying to focus on what really.
Yeah. I think if there's anything I'm taking away from our conversation today, it's going to look different at different times. And as much as we love tradition, and also if we were to just be in the moment and enjoy what it looks like right now and look around at who's around you and what you love about them. And even if you are with family that, I said this to a client at one point, if you're with family that you don't agree with, or you think they should be different, anytime you catch yourself thinking that someone in your family should be different and that is affecting your spirit in the holiday season, then you have to ask yourself, then why are you doing it? Why are you there?
Exactly.
Well, because they're family. Okay. So if it's because they're family, then you're there being with that person because it's what you need to feel good or like a good person, not because you can choose to be with that person or not be with that person, but be responsible in why you're choosing to be with that person and not put it on them that you have to.
Exactly.
And for a lot of people, when I make that distinction for them, it really takes a lot of the load and judgment off of the relationship, where they can just either let it go and just, I don't want to say tolerate that person, but just have no opinion. Okay, yep, that's who they are. I accept it. I love them unconditionally because this is my family, and that's what family is important to me. And I don't need my family to show up in a specific way in order for me to love them, or don't.
Mm-hmm.
But be responsible that you're choosing to be in that situation.
Staying honest, but keeping the honesty in a context of kindness and compassion makes a huge difference. And that kindness and compassion needs to be inner focused as well. That's kindness and compassion with yourself, with an honesty that's you own, even if it's something that goes counter to the messaging that you've been taught related to what the holidays are supposed to be about. So keeping that mindfulness of, okay, without judgment, what's going on and where's it coming from, and being able to pick that apart and then apply it in a kind way externally and in a kind and compassionate way with yourself makes a huge difference. Trying to, I started working on, I like my
your list.
Top 5 lists or tops. So I started working on one of those and I kind of threw it out the window, but I just started thinking about some of the highlights. But one of the things that so many people have difficulty with around this time is just saying no to whether it's visits or parties or dinners. And that's one of those areas of honesty, though, that really needs to take place to stay healthy, is your ability to say no in a kind and compassionate way, and there's no reason to make excuses. It's okay to say no, and giving yourself permission to do that when it's necessary.
And it makes me think of some friends of ours that we have. I remember last year, they are a family that we dearly love, and we're friends all throughout the year. and they wanted to get together around the holidays. And I said, can we plan for January? Because if I put one more thing on our calendar, it's just not leaving any downtime for our family. And my husband specifically, I'm an extrovert. He's an introvert. He needs downtime to recharge. And so the holidays can be really draining for him. And I could just, in the past, I have overscheduled us and it has made it very unenjoyable for him. And so I said, can we just wait till January? I said, with all of the family that we have, that we do want to see, I just can't say yes to one more thing. And it's because I want to enjoy you. I want to enjoy my time with you. And I don't want it to become a task. I don't want it to become something I feel obligated to do. And of course, they were like, oh, of course, we totally understand. And so that time has rolled around and I just got a message from them and I don't feel the same this year. I'm like, oh, okay, we have space for this. So it doesn't have to be always. I love that they come back and they ask. And I think it would be fun. And we have a different schedule, a different calendar than we did last year. So I do encourage people to be honest with people about what is it that you need to make this season joyful for you. Not that you have to be, but where can you find the moments of joy, exactly, even in the midst of the grief, even in the midst of the things about the holidays that hurt, the unhealed parts of your childhood that still linger. There's moments. It's not this huge, overarching, grandiose time. It's the joy in the tiny, tiny moments. And go ahead.
Well, it made me think of something that I haven't thought of in a while. A friend of mine who has passed that used to live in New York, he struggled a lot with depression and anxiety. And this time of year, sort of the compounding effect of the shorter days, the off schedule, the pressure of the holidays, everything was challenging for him. So he had a ritual, and I would call it self-therapy. He would go to the ice skating rink in Central Park, starting right after Thanksgiving, all the way through the holidays, almost a daily basis, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And he didn't ice skate. And I never thought about it. He was just like, well, I would talk to him or I'd get a message from him. He's like, yeah, I'm on my way to Central Park, to the ice rink, or to the ice rink. And one day I just thought, it's like, do you ice skate or, what, do you go there all the time? And he's like, well, no, I don't ice skate. I said, well, why are you going to the ice rink? And he said, well, that is one of the places I've found on a regular basis I can go. And there's so much happiness and so much joy going on. And when I can't find my own, I can borrow some from those people. And that just made me think of what you said, do what you need to do to find those moments of joy, to find those aspects that are healing for you, that are helpful for you. And be okay with that. Be okay to take that time to make those moments, as opposed to feeling like it's got to be externally focused and complying or conforming to what somebody else's vision of how the holiday should look.
Yeah, that's powerful. So
it got me choked up a little.
Yeah, it hit my heart too. It really hit my heart. And so sometimes it looks like borrowing other people's joy. Yeah. But I think when we slow down for just a moment and we stop and we look around, you can find it. It's Absolutely. Just sometimes we don't take the time to, and it takes a second, just a second. We have to wrap up, but I'll leave it with this is I will never forget the moment I rediscovered joy. It was in a Kohl's, really bright. I can remember the fluorescent lights and I was looking for a gift. I was in one of those moments of, I need to figure out a gift. I need to figure out a gift. And I found this white picture and it was like a all white and gray Santa standing next to a fireplace. And I saw it and it made me choke up. And I went, oh, this is where joy is. Joy is in really tiny moments in the middle of a Kohl's department store when you spy something that touches your heart.
Absolutely.
And that's all it has to be. And that was the moment that started this entire journey for me, that life gets to be joyful.
That's amazing. Yeah. And your willingness to acknowledge that and take it in and process it in a changing sort of way.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. I don't think you've ever told me that before. really cool.
So we do have to wrap up. This is an extra long episode, and we really do try to keep them to 30 minutes. But as we're going into this time with the holidays, we just really wanted to depart from business because creating wealth is a whole human experience. And this time of the holidays is part of that. So I think this was a really powerful conversation that got to be had. And I hope that you found it supportive. I would love to hear what nugget you took away or what was helpful for you. Please connect with me on Instagram at Alecia St and just send me a direct message. Like, what did you love about this? What hit? What helped? What hurt? Any of it. We're available and here for it all. And we love you so much. We're going to come to you on Christmas Eve with another episode, and we'll be here on New Year's Eve with another episode. So as you're going about prepping for your holiday, we hope that you'll maybe pop in some earbuds and we can cook alongside of you or whatever it is that you do. All right. Sending you so much love.
Be well, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.